So, Dan, welcome back. Read on the Record
Thanks, Frank.
podcast. How's it going?
It's going good, Frank. How about
All
yourself?
right. I am
Good.
doing great. I have had a wonderful past couple of weeks out there, given our seminar to some law enforcement officers, some folks in the private sector out there,
Hmm.
and it has been going great. Everything is great my way. For those of you who are joining us right now, if you have a question, a comment, if you have an idea, you can shoot us an email at readontherecord@gmail.com. You should see that popping up on the screen right now. If you go down to the show notes, there is also a link tree. And if you click the link tree, you can see where you can watch our videos on YouTube and Spotify, as well as you can listen Apple Podcast and wherever your favorite podcast is syndicated at. Just click our little link tree, go over there, and you should find the links, and everything should be pretty much squared away on that front. So,
Great, Frank.
Dan, yes, Dan,
Yeah.
I've got something really, really cool for us today.
All right.
Now, I
What
know
is
that
it? Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a guess. We're either going to do some finger painting or we're going to talk about chefing. So it's just kind of where do you? Yeah,
Oh, the culinaries. Oh, okay. Yeah,
that's
I can't
it.
even
Yeah.
spell culinary, so let's do the other thing.
Well, don't worry.
How
I
about an
still
email?
can't.
How about an email?
An email. That would be good. That would be good. Speaking of an email, we have an email from somebody who wishes to remain anonymous. I'm going to go ahead and read out this email. Now we
Don't you
had
wish some
an
days you could remain anonymous, Frank?
Well, you
I
might
do.
know there might be some sites where I am anonymous. You never know
Yeah.
about that. That's the
Yeah.
best thing
I
about
know.
it.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
This individual wishes to remain anonymous. He sent it in. This came to me in an indirect way, though. But what I'm going to do, Dan, is I know that we had something different planned out for this episode, but this question is so good, we both decided that we were going to dedicate an entire episode to it. So, anonymous, don't worry, not all hope for the future is lost. Just hang in there, and we're going to try and help you the best we can. Are you ready, Dan?
I'm ready, Frank.
All
Bring
right.
it on. Yeah.
All right, so here is our listener's question. Hi, Dan and Frank. I already listened to episode 0. When is the first official episode going to be released and what will it cover? Well, to answer that question, myself and Dan, we recorded this episode pre the release of episode 1. So by the time the listener is actually going to get this episode, this will have been the fourth official release of Read on the Record podcast. But I will be reaching out to you personally to kind of clarify exactly, any kind of confusion that you may be having. But what we're about to do now is we're going to get into the meat and bones of his question. Also, I had a question about translators. Oh boy, this sounds
Okay.
good.
Good. Yeah.
I took your course in Illinois last year and didn't get a chance to ask, but I recently tried using a translator while using your read interviewing BAI stuff. All right. To make a long story short, it was a disaster. The two of them spoke in Korean on and off throughout the interview, leaving me felt left out. When I asked questions, my subject in a burglary case would laugh and then look over to my translator, and the two of them would talk without me understanding what the heck was going on. Only instead of saying heck, he said something else. About halfway through, I was losing my quote attitude end quote of a good investigator. Well, if I'm being honest with you, I was super pissed off and I got up and left. The two of them actually laughed and talked for another 10 minutes before my captain came in and made them leave. I don't remember if you went over it, but if this happens next time and I need to use a translator, what can I do different to make it better for everybody involved? From a frustrated cop from the great state of Illinois.
Okay, Frank. Well, that is a great question. We're asked that a lot in our programs. I have experience using translators in interviews, interrogations, and I've even had to use translators when doing a 4-day seminar, both in well in Arabic and let's see, Portuguese. So it can be frustrating, but here is some tips or suggestions we have as far as the use of a translator. First of all, you try to use someone that the subject is not familiar with, simply
Great point.
because
Yes.
simply because it and I'm not even concerned sometimes about the integrity of the interpreter. It becomes a factor, especially if an embarrassment to the subject. Uh, they may not feel comfortable saying things because they know that person is there, or there could be a fear they have of admitting something in front of someone that they know, like, or let's say has trusted them. So if you can do that, that would be number one. Use someone that's not familiar with the subject. Second thing is when the use of a translator, you need to prepare them before the interview. And by that I mean you need to sit down with the translator and explain. These are the questions that I'm going to be going through, and especially since you mentioned about the BAI form, that's perfect. You explain, you read out the questions to the translator as you're going to ask them, and you have the translator translate for you the question. You need to explain to the translator also that they need to translate the question exactly the way that you put it. Don't attempt to paraphrase it in any way. And go, and if there's a problem with the words or meaning in different languages, make sure the translator clarifies that with the investigator, and this is all done ahead of time. Also, the translator should be directed that they're not to have any conversations with the subject in that room unless directed through you. If they ask you, what's your name, you direct it to the investigator, and the investigator will respond. Don't answer the subject. What we also recommend too is that the translator be seen. Now there are different ways of doing this. There's
Hmm.
no set way of using a translator,
Yeah.
and I'll mention different things that people have mentioned to us. But what we do is we like to place the translator directly next to us in that room. And that way, when you ask a question directly to the subject, the translator would translate that, and then the subject's response is not going to be to you, it's going to be to the translator. But by having the translator right next to you, you're able to observe a lot of that person's behavior, especially the eye contact and that. So you place the translator off to the side, and that you kind of out in left field there. So we suggest right next to you. Also, is that when you're doing this, make sure that you direct your question, then the translator translates, and then whatever the subject says, you need to make sure the translator is translating exactly again what the subject said. I've had it where you ask him a question, what do you think should happen to the person, for example, that did this? The translator translates that. The subject goes on for a minute in their language, and the translator says, well, he says, go to jail. Well, a lot more happened than just saying go to jail. So you need to hear exactly what they're saying. Don't attempt to clarify, just paraphrase it. The other thing is that if things start to get off track, always draw the attention back to what you're asking. As far as if they start talking off the topic, just direct the translator, just say that you want to make sure that we have everything. We'll cover those areas later, not blow the person off. But yeah, that's important. We'll talk about that later, but stay on the topic being discussed. And it's important too that the translator is familiar with what you're doing, what you're looking for. And that takes time explaining what you're going to be going through, how you want to ask the questions, and that.
So, Dan, whenever you are discussing that the translator needs to say exactly what you're saying, does this mean that the translator should translate it like, okay, Dan is asking this, Frank is asking this, or should it be more of a first person type of translation?
You should have the translator repeat the question just as you ask it. And another thing too is that when you ask questions, you the investigator, you don't want to say, I want you to ask him this, or I want you to ask him that. You ask the question directly to the person, and then immediately the translator will translate that. Now, one thing that there's two kinds of translators that we deal with. One is where you're asking the question, you stop, they translate the question, the subject responds, and then the translator repeats it to you. That is probably the more common. The best way to use a translator, if you can find them, is where they can do simultaneous translation. As you're speaking, that person is translating exactly what you're saying in real time. However, it is difficult to find those types of translators to be able to do that. I've done seminars with both, where the person is translating just as I'm talking, and that seems to go really, really well. But again, it's hard. Many translators can't do that. So
Hmm.
you have to use it where you ask the question, have them translated, subject responds, and then the translator, it tells you exactly what the person is saying, and that.
Totally understandable too, because what few or little foreign language proficiency I have, there's no way I could probably translate something in real time. With that being said, do you think it would be helpful if if during the interview, the translator had a copy of the questions in front of him
Yeah,
or
yeah,
her?
yeah, absolutely. They, if at all possible, again, and this is again preparing yourself for the interview, is that it is a very good idea for the investigator to read the questions that they're going to be asking the subject. Now, you don't want the translator reading the question as it's going to be, but as if you sit down with that translator and say, okay, this question I'm going to ask, what do you think should happen to the person that did this? Did you do it? Do you know who did this? Have them write those out, but so they have a little bit of a guide. But it's still better that they are translating exactly what you're saying, only because sometimes, as you well know, Frank, uh, you just don't stick to the script of the BAI. Things, depending on what the person is saying, or even another question that you might think of, will come up. So the translator needs to be flexible, but they can have
Rigid
that as a
state of
guide.
flexibility.
Yeah,
Definitely.
they
Yeah.
have to have that guide, but again, it all goes back to you preparing the person ahead of time. And this is not something that can be done probably within 5 minutes. I mean, you do need to go over everything with the individual that is to being the translator.
So logistically, we can talk about what the logistics of a setup like this would look like. So let's say that I have a subject who's coming in to the police department on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. The best time to have a debrief with my translator is probably not 9:45 a.m. on Tuesday, is it?
Exactly. No, especially if you're dealing with someone who is not familiar with this. Now, some departments may have on staff people that can speak that subject's language, and that which would be great, especially if it's another investigator. Um, it's
Even
much easier
better.
to sit
Yes,
down
yes.
with that person and just explain. But again, the translation needs to be exact, and the other investigators shouldn't be interjecting their questions. It should be all coming again from you. If you're using, and sometimes we use an outside service as a translator, then you need to again prepare that person what's going on. And we've in the past used translators in Chicago certainly, and we have used companies where they always send the same interpreter for this particular language. Let's say if you said Russian,
Hmm.
and the more familiar that interpreter is with what you're doing, the smoother things really go. And that's the most ideal scenarios in that. So you need to sit down and really prepare. So give yourself a lot of time ahead of time.
So I would also like to talk about the setup in the interview itself. We mentioned having the interpreter sitting beside us. So
Yes. Now, that's the way that we have done it and had really good success with it. In that
mhm.
way, you're by having the interpreter right next to you, you're fully involved with the interview or the interrogation. Other agencies, one in particular, the military. They suggest sometimes placing the translator directly behind the subject. So you're sitting there in front of them, just like we normally would do, but the translator is now behind the subject
Mm.
and they do the
Mhm.
translation. Some investigators that I've talked to seem to like that, say, it doesn't appear to be a distraction. Others say it's a little bit awkward where the subject seems to be almost always turning to the interpreter talking to them.
Probably
But my
trying to
point,
hear them. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And
but
if
my,
you're in
my
front of
point
them.
being is that there's not just one way of doing it. I mean, it's I would try perhaps both ways, see what you've had better success with, see what you're more comfortable with. That's probably the best. But those two methods that I've talked about are ones that usually work pretty well.
Really, really good. And one of the dynamics that I found that the investigator must at least have some kind of control over in an interview, especially an interrogation, is the proximity of eye contact. And so, one of the challenges I've always had with the translator is that no matter where the translator is positioned, no matter where they are, I can look at the subject and, I'm trying to get a little bit of some eye contact from them. I'll ask the question. And when the translator is asking the question in their language, there's always that search for eye contact. And
Well,
yeah,
that's going
yeah,
to
that's
be
just,
that's a good
mhm,
question. That's just natural.
mhm,
And what would tell you then is that in an interview or even in an interrogation, you don't want to read too much into eye contact
mhm.
unless it's something very
Yes.
obvious. Where, we talk about one of the things that we mention is people a lot of times look away when they're lying. That may not be the case so much using a translator. So you can't place a lot of reliability in it unless you see something very, very obvious where you're saying to the person, "Did you do it?" and they go, "No," and they're looking over here.
Or they
That's
go down
something you
like
can
this.
rely on.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
You get that head nod.
you got to be careful about reading with translators into too many of the minor, or I shouldn't say minor, but some of these less significant types of behavior. That's the thing to remember. Some of the things may not apply.
So we were talking about the dynamics of the interview whenever you're using a translator, and that was kind of I guess that's what was centered around our listeners' email. But can we talk about now the interrogation? How did
Yeah,
those
yeah.
dynamics change?
Well,
Do they change, or what
they
does that look
certainly
like?
do. They certainly do, and because literally the translator is now doing the interrogation, and again, you need to, if you have conducted the interview, which I assume you have through the translator, you may not be able to interrogate the person that same day, but if you can, that's good. But sit down with the translator now, and again, explain what's going to happen. Say, we're going to go in there, and I'm going to say to this individual, Frank, our investigation indicates that you were the one that fired those shots, broke into that jewelry store, whatever the issue is. And you need to explain and be looking at the individual when these things are being said. I have had it where translators have told me, "Oh, I can't say that," and I'm a little confused. This is, it doesn't translate right. Oh no, no, I can't tell them that they're not telling the truth. So
Oh, I see. Yeah, well,
you got to make sure that
yeah.
the translator is good with what you're doing here, because some people, it's just not in their nature to be confrontational. Not that we're not yelling or anything, but they may feel very uncomfortable with that or hesitant. So you got to be making sure that they're able to do this, and you need to explain to the translator some of the ideas of your themes. And again, it's a slow process because you're going to be having to speak a little bit. They're going to translate, speak a little bit, and you really, as we talk about, lose the flow of the rhythm, I should say, of you in that interrogation, where you're constantly talking in that. But you have really no choice in that matter. It's also, you could still use what we call about stopping denials. If they start to say something, you don't even have to know what they're saying, but you can still
You
use
can
what we're
tell.
talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah,
Hmm.
and just holding that hand up, gaining control through the interpreter and that. But the big thing is at the very beginning explaining. And if you can, go over the themes that you're going to be developing with the subject through the interpreter. So everything is clear before you walk in there. And again, it just takes a lot of time.
So I can tell you a question that I had in the great state of Texas in regards to a translator, and maybe you can help me out with this one. The student was on board with pretty much everything that we are saying here. And her question was, well, hey, at the very end of the interrogation, I've gotten the admission. The subject has given me a full, detailed confession with, providing independent evidence, all that good stuff that would substantiate a truthful confession. If English is not their language, and if they're writing me out a confession, like if they're doing the handwritten confession in
Mm-hmm.
step 9, should I get the translator in the room right then to write out their confession in English? So it's like, are there going to be two confessions right there, or do we just take their written confession, have somebody else translate it? So,
Well, I think you got to be careful, at least on the surface here, of the translator writing out the confession. I mean,
mm,
once the subject would write it out, and here's the thing too, if the subject is writing out their confession and that details, you're asking questions, they're writing down the responses in step 9 here, what you're asking. You have to have the translator there with you to make sure that what the person is writing down is, the truth
true and accurate.
and
Yes,
true and
yes.
accurate. Yes, so the translator needs to be there. I don't know if it'd be eventually their confession will be translated, but it doesn't. I don't think it needs to be translated exactly right
Not
then at
real
that time.
time right then.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
something for a follow up
Yeah,
post
but as long as you
investigation, post
know,
step 9.
based
Yeah.
on what the translator is saying, that the confession is absolutely, what the subject is saying, not what the translator said or you said, is that it's the truth, and corroboration is there for everything that the person is saying.
Oh, yes, for
Yes, sir.
sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And on that point, I would like to let all of the listeners know is that if you are a translator or if you have been used in that capacity, we greatly appreciate you.
Yes,
Really,
and
really
if you,
appreciate you.
and
Yes.
also with the listeners too, that are translators, is that if you have suggestions that you find that have worked very well for you that we
Wonderful.
didn't cover, we certainly want to hear your suggestions in that, uh, because you're right there doing it. But again, I think the key points is if you have another investigator be the translator, that's great. And if you have, and again, you try to use the same person over and over again if you can, because the more familiar they are, the better job they're going to do.
That sounds great. And if you are a student and you are looking at law enforcement, and if you have a foreign language proficiency, let's suppose you're a college student or maybe you're in military, whatever your status in the world is, a great place to get your toe in the world of law enforcement, private investigations, I think is translating. I'm sure your local police department, sheriff's department, state agency are in need of translators,
And
is what it is.
Frank, one
Good
of the,
way.
yes, they are very much so.
Mhm.
And I've also trained in some departments that frequently use translators, and what the department has actually done is they send their translators through our 4-day program. Even though the translator is not per se doing the interview, like the investigator, the interrogation, I mean, they want them to be familiar with the whole process, what the method would be as far as what we're saying, what we're looking for in answers from subjects, the understanding of themes, stopping denials, and that. And sometimes the more familiar the interpreter is, the smoother the interrogation or as well as the interview goes.
Exactly, yes. And so imagine having that on your resume. I really like the idea of that, Dan. You're a young 20 something, you're an undergraduate somewhere, and you're putting in for a law enforcement, and they look at your job history and they see where you've translated for local, some agencies. You have taken our 4 day, and then you went a step further and you joined the Reed Institute and actually became certified in it. Boy, what an asset to any agency out there in the world you would really be.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you. I think we've about
Okay,
covered,
Frank.
at least for now, this is going to be round one of Translators. I'm looking forward to getting some more questions and comments.